I call this meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. Chairman Jesse is running a little bit late, but as soon as he gets here, he'll take over. And with that, I would ask Mr. Reggie to offer a prayer.
We come once again to say thank you for leading us to this place. Father, now recognizing the time of year, the season, county business, Father, we pray that the things that we do here today will be a blessing to everybody. Father, strengthen us in the decisions that we have to make. Be with us. Teach us to understand one another. Let us be one unit, one person, one mind, with a lot of ideas that when we leave this meeting, Father, that we can talk about the goodness of each other, but most of all, the goodness of you. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.
Thank you. And Mr. Mansfield, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving into the agenda, looking to see if there is any changes to the agenda. If not, would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I'd like to move that we accept it.
I'll second.
Perfect. Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Mr. Mansfield,
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
and Mr. Koontz.
Aye. Thank you. We also have the minutes from the November 3rd regular meeting and the November 4th redistricting work session. Are there any edits or changes that anyone might have? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of both the November 3rd regular meeting and the November 4th redistricting work session.
So moved.
A second.
We have a motion by Mr. Williams and a second by Mr. Kimbrough. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Mansfield,
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough,
Aye.
Mr. Koontz.
Aye. Item 1C, disbursements, page 20 to 38.
That's all part of the consent agenda.
Good enough. Payroll as well?
Yes.
Okay, so moving on to public comments, we will ask for public comments to not exceed 3 minutes. Any member of the public can come to the podium. Please state your name and what district and address you are coming from, and we will open the public comment.
At this time, I've only got one person signed up for public comment, and that would be M.V. Putney.
Thank you, Board of Supervisors, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm going to be real brief. I'm here this afternoon about the reassessments. I know it's early in that process, but I got my reassessments, and they average from 18 to 47% increase. That's a lot. I know the county did a reassessment 5 years ago. So I know you guys have not set the rate for that. So I do have a meeting tomorrow with the reassessment office. Hoping that's going to be a positive one. But 47% is a little much to bite. So with that being said, I'm here this afternoon to hope that you guys, when you, and I don't think I'm just the only case, but when you guys have your meeting and try to set this rate, that you do kind of look around and do the best. Times are tight, as everybody knows. I know y'all's budget is as well. So with that being said, thank you again, and just take that under consideration when you have your meeting with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please remember to state where you are from as well as your name.
Well, I guess y'all have seen me a lot. Is this working okay? Okay, I'm Monica Sanders, and I live in Topping, Virginia. And I wanted to talk about We the People. We lost our Constitution in 1871 to the Crown, the City of London, and the Vatican. This is a matter of public record, but it's not very well known, and it will come to light after a while. A corporation was filed, the United States of America Corporation. I know it was filed in Delaware and Florida, maybe in other states as well. The deep state, known as the Khazarian Mafia, and there's a lot of other names, who are unelected, wealthy people, decided the fate of We the People. They decided they had enough of us. And there is a plan which is going to come out where they wanted to go underground and nuke us and not be, nobody will be here. Well, this sounds like something that's way out, but anyway. Donald John Trump is God's anointed one, and in about a year, all this will be known. And the Board of Supervisors, you guys are here to do things for the people of this county. It is we the people. And so when you go to spend and increase our budget by 20%, you need to ask us if we want water and sewer and if we want this and that and the other. We think that's just a little bit too much to be spending the people's money instead of your money. If you want to spend your own money, I have no problem with that at all. Those of us there are several people here that are really in touch with Jesus Christ, and I highly recommend that anybody who's not, I'll welcome you to go to Cornerstone Fellowship Church or any place that you would like and become very well acquainted, because it's we the people who will be in control of things. And it's not anything against any one particular person. It's just that this is something, a declaration that we the people are the people that are going to be making decisions. So if you all would mind listening to us, that would be great. Thank you.
Are there any others that would like to comment? Seeing none, we will move on. Closing public comment. Moving into the constitutional officers, I see that the treasurer has given us all a memo, and there is no report. And the Commissioner of Revenue has provided a report in the packet, page 44. I think we can then move into agency and staff reports. We have VDOT, Lee McKnight.
Right. Good afternoon, members of the board. Just going to give everyone a quick update of what's going on in terms of VDOT. I am happy to announce that Route 625 over Barracks Pond, that bridge project is complete. There is no bridge posting needed at this time. It was posted at 15 tons for single unit vehicles and 21 tons for semis. But as a result of the bridge replacement, those postings are no longer needed. Paving on Route 17 and Route 33 is complete. However,
Lee, would you like us to keep questions till after your full report, or do you want to go individually?
if you have any questions about this specific project.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
The signage will be up still for some matter of time?
It's taken down as of today.
Oh, perfect.
Actually, I just got that update when I was
Perfect.
sitting
Thanks,
in
Lee.
here. Yes, sir. Paving on Route 17 and 33 is complete. You may have noticed, however, that there were some locations that have been milled and repaved again. That is because those sections did not meet our specifications and standards. The contractor was required to replace those pavements per the agreement. So sorry for any inconvenience that may have caused. I just felt it was important that we got the best possible product and they were held to the contract. Some upcoming projects, I did want to mention some things. UPC 117991, that is the Deltaville Multimodal Project with the the shared use path. That project's currently still in scoping. Right now, completion of scoping is expected in April sometime. At that time, once the completion of scoping, we can determine the schedule and kind of fine tune the budget and that sort of stuff better. So more to come on that project. Is there any questions to that project specifically? Okay. And that's the shared use path. It begins at the volunteer fire department and goes to Green Cove Lane. The speed study for Regent Road, I know that was a question last update or last board meeting. It's currently at unposted statutory 55 miles per hour. The study has been completed. It recommended posting of the road at 55 miles per hour. That has received concurrence from the local sheriff's department and state police. However, I will say it is still under a final review by the district traffic engineer. But pending that review, that is the recommendations of that study. Do you have any questions about that? Okay.
I got a question about it.
Yes, sir.
Because we know that road is not safe, and we live here. And it seems like the ones that are making the decision don't live here. They don't drive up and down that road. They don't realize there's no shoulders on that road. They're not considering the Dirt Bridge Road that goes out to Route 3. So to study something, it seems like, it's like studying a test, a math test for a history course. And you're always going to come to the wrong conclusions. Enough individuals complaining about that road, and it needs something to be done. I think it needs to be more than just a speed limit slowed back. And that's regardless of who says that drives on that road. As individuals of this county, and as a supervisor of half of that road, what we are saying, we need something done. We want something done. So we appreciate it if you take it back to them again and say, well, we want something to happen.
Sure.
And I understand studies, but we the outcome. That road is not safe.
Speed limits, it's important to remain consistent as possible, and I think everyone would agree, statewide, consistency is desirable, because if you're going between counties or even interstate, if you're going from one state to another, as much consistency that's good. That creates safety for the most part. So these studies and speed limit studies are developed with a defined data-driven process. It's consistent across the entire state. It's done the same way. And in a lot of cases, in a lot of the states, they use the same process. And the reason for that is to be as consistent as possible when determining these speed limits. That being said, we can definitely take a look at it. There are numerous warning signs on the curves. I know it's got some locations. There's advisory speed limits. There's chevrons. It's got center line. It's got, in some sections, it's got edge line. So, as of right now, the recommendation is to post it. It's currently, again, unposted statutory 55. It is recommended to post it at 55.
Just one other thing,
Sure.
I appreciate, you speaking up for whoever made the decision and send you the information. But in one time of standing there, they would say, well, something would have to happen. Then you would consider it. I mean, it was saying, you didn't say it, but I heard it sitting right here. If something happened, then they come back and say, we got blind spots on that road. And these kind of things done on a study. We studied one road, I understand, but consistency. But this is Mill 6. And we can't take everything that they do in Gloucester or somewhere else or King and Queen.
Sure.
And 55 on that speed, that road there is just not, it don't make good sense. I mean, it just don't make good sense. And you could take a poll of Middlesex County that goes through that do not make sense. And I lack data. I lack data, but a misused data is about the worst thing we can have.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions about that speed study?
Is there a process at this point where we've got the recommendations, we get through the traffic engineer review, but the community is still saying, we think it's more serious than what your study has determined? Is there an appeal process or something where the county can say to VDOT, you need to take another look? Posting it at 55 isn't going to slow people And we have had incidents, to Reggie's point, recently. Is there an actual process that we can engage in?
There is not. The results of the study are what they are. I mean, there's no. I don't have any bias in the road. The data is the data. We get the 85th percentile of the speeds of the vehicles traveling. We look at the safety, the crashes of the recorded crashes on the road. We look at the alignment. We look at all those sorts of things, and then they make a determination. There's a database that actually most of the 50 states use to actually back up what the study has shown, just to make sure that it's in line with what the other 50 states are, and then they make that decision when posting the speed limit. I will add as well, if you post some, for example, like a guardrail, if you put up a guardrail that's not warranted based on the data, and someone were to hit that guardrail and get injured, or worse, it results in a fatality, someone's going to want to know why that guardrail was put up. And if the data does not support the guardrail installation, it cannot go there. If the data does not support a speed limit reduction, for example, there's a reason for that. Not saying that in the future it won't be reduced, because we could definitely keep looking at it. And I think maybe with increased enforcement and posting of the speed limit, that might help. It might help slow people down a little bit. I was looking at some of the 85th percentiles of that road, and they're high. They're very, very high in locations. So increased enforcement would go a long way with slowing people down on that road.
Does your study factor in the unique nature of some communities with different socioeconomic backgrounds? We recently had a pedestrian that likely should not have been on the road that he was on, and he was struck and killed. That happens around here. We have people that walk because they have no other means of transportation. So we're having incidents, and I'm curious if your study factors that in, because I know that Regent Road is a section. I know some people that walk that road.
In general, officially not in the actual report, but there are when they observe the road, because like you said, not every road is the same across the Commonwealth. So when they do review the road in the field, they are looking for things such as, footpaths that are unofficial, or how much foot traffic is in the area. So that does, I'm not going to say it does not come into play with that decision, because it is an observation that is taken into account.
Is there any way that you can escalate internally at VDOT? Because I don't think this body has a history of looking for slower speed limits across the county. This is a unique situation. We've had a fatality. We've had an accident on Regent. I would just ask for you to look into your bag of tricks and find anything you can to see if we can take another look, because I just don't think anybody that shares that road in our two districts, our constituents don't think that study got the result correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Any other questions about that hot topic? All right. Well, and in terms of maintenance, we're gearing up for the winter season. There was actually snow in the forecast for tomorrow morning. I'm fingers crossed that doesn't happen. We've conducted sweeping on 227 and 602 as part of the Oyster Festival, and I was very pleased with how that festival went off without a hitch. So thank you for our local partners with that one. We completed a ditching project on Route 614 Forest Chapel Road, and pothole patching and site distance cutting countywide continues and will continue so. And is there any other additional questions?
I had just one other.
Sure.
I forget which section of the Pooler Highway that this occurred on, but during paving, it appeared that trucks were leaving remnants of the blacktop, and it was balling up. And I suspect that had an impact on constituents' vehicles, their safety on the road. Do you know what happened? Was there one or two errant truck drivers, or do you know what the backstory is?
I heard about that particular issue, it was addressed with the contractor. I don't know specifically what caused it.
Okay.
There were a few issues with some of the paving jobs. I know in Hartfield one day, it got a little crazy down there. So we're addressing it with the contractor. There was some performance issues, quality issues that we are holding them accountable to the contract as much as possible.
Yeah, in particular at the Hartfield one, there wasn't adequate thought about three-way flagging at Regent, ironically.
Yep.
And it backed it all the way up into Deltaville and down Twiggs Ferry. And had it been managed appropriately by the flagging outfit, that could have been a lot smoother.
Agreed. And in general, that area, we do have a time of day restriction. It's normally all done at night, always. The problem is we ran out of temperature at that time, so they had to switch to day work. So totally agreed. I drove through it myself. I was not very pleased with how that operation was being performed.
Very good. Any other questions from the board? Thanks so much, Lee.
All right.
Are you providing an update on the path, the Deltaville bicycle path?
Yes, sir. The Deltaville multimodal project, they're currently in scoping. The scoping is scheduled to be completed by April. Once scoping is completed, the schedule will be determined, and we can kind of fine tune that project. Is there any specific questions about that project that you were?
Really, my specific question was, why is it taking so long? It seems like this started, 6 months ago, and I haven't heard anything about it. And so just wanted to see if we can get it on a fast track. It would be nice to have something happen this summer, but if we're not going to have scope till April, that's not going to happen.
Yes, no, scoping, I mean, I can talk to them about trying to expedite that, but yeah, there's a lot going on in terms of utilities. There might be some utilities impacts. It's supposed to go on the southern side of the road, so there's a lot of right-of-way things going on there. So I will talk to them, but yes, as of right now, the completion date of scoping is not until April. And then once that is completed, then they can make their schedule and construction start dates and that sort of stuff. But I'll talk to them. I think that I talked to them this morning actually about this particular project, and the contractor or the consultant that's working on the project is currently working on scoping it.
If you can fire them up.
All right, I'll do my best. I'll reach into my bag of tricks, as Mr. Kuntz said.
Thank you, Lee.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
Next up, we have Dr. Seitz with School Matters, Budget Supplements and Transfer.
Good afternoon. We have in your packet 2 appropriation requests and 1 budget transfer. I can do a quick overview. The first appropriation request is a series of 3 grants, some of which are granted to us automatically and a couple that we applied for. And the second appropriation request, that's the actual appropriations for fiscal year, and that includes ESSER and a variety of title funds, IDEA, Perkins, and vocational equipment. And then for the budget transfer request, that was an amendment that we did to our ESSER 2 grant, and from when we originally submitted the grant and moving the monies over to where they are currently needed. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have on those.
Hearing none, we would entertain a motion from someone to approve budget appropriation requests FY 2022-23 and 24, as well as budget transfer request FY 2022-06.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion properly seconded. Any debate, discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Mansfield,
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough,
Aye.
Mr. Williams, and Mr. Kuntz.
Aye. Thank you. Anything else?
I got one thing.
Yes, sir.
I've been always talking about doing more with less. And Mr. Dustin Harris, your Director of Operation, and he been a prime example of doing more with less. He's the head of, the director, and this afternoon he's driving for me, to be at this meeting. And so when individuals started looking at more with less, I want them to think about that, because the question is, can we get so high that we can't go down and do a job that really need to be done, regardless on what position you're in? Thank you for Dustin.
Yes, and I agree. On Friday, he drove 2 afternoon bus routes and then turned around and drove the bus and the parade on Friday evening, so.
And I would note that he does so with a smile on his face every time.
Absolutely.
You cannot tell if he feels overworked at all, but we should be watching that too.
And you are exactly right, because he is overworked. And we certainly are paying attention to that. But you're right. He does it all because he believes that, he's here at Middlesex County Public Schools for a reason. That is his second place as his work family, and he does it all with a smile.
And I would commend you and Dr. Bishop as well, this COVID vaccination that we've had to put on at the schools. That was not on the agenda 2, 3, 4 years ago. And you were both there greeting us with our children, spending your evening there, and the same comment as we have for Dustin. You're there with a smile on your face and happily helping the community. And I commend your entire organization for that attitude that seems to permeate our school district.
It does. Thank you. Thank you for that recognition. All right. Thank you all.
Next up, report only. Social services could be found on page 52 and 53. And then we'll move to 4D, HRSD project update, Jeremiah Burford.
Board, I appreciate your time. Apologize for my attire. I was at a job site and didn't have enough time to change. But giving an update on the various projects that are going on in Middlesex. First, we'll start with MP 013600, Middlesex Transmission Force Main Phase 1. That project is substantially complete. As of August, we are looking to do the final completion walkthrough December 20th, and should be close.
1 second, Jeremy. Can you put the page 54 up there for the audience? Because I think it's helpful to see what Jeremiah is telling us about. And you're starting with the orange, currently active?
Yes.
All right, sorry to hold you up.
Oh, no, you're fine. So that's looking to do a walkthrough at the end of December for a final walkthrough, and that project should be closing out August of 2022 for the warranty period. MP 0135 or 13500, Middlesex, the Cook's Corner service area. That project is looking like it's going to be going to construction, are going to bid early January. We finished up the environmental assessment and we had our hearing November 30th. And with no objections from DEQ, we'll be moving forward with that shortly after, once we receive the letter. MP 13710, Middlesex Interceptor System Program Phase 2, Saluda Pump Station. Currently, we are working with the County of Middlesex on a cost-sharing agreement for that project to make sure that we deviate the pump station appropriately. And that's due to the Phase 1 of the Saluda in the PER identifying a pump station need for Phase 1. We also need a pump station for the transmission force main. We thought it would be beneficial to combine those two pump stations into one and save both HRSD and the county funding on that pump station. We just received a tech memo on the Saluda pump station to identify the appropriate location of the pump station, either at the jail site and adjacent to the treatment plant, or utilizing the treatment plant that we currently have. MP 013720, the Hartfield pump station. We are currently, again, that's another one that we saw benefit of utilizing one pump station instead of building two pump stations with Middlesex, and we're currently working on a cost sharing agreement to address those issues. We have received the 50% design package into November. We are scheduling a review for that and moving forward with that project. Currently, we have acquired the property for that pump station last month, and we don't see any issues with that project at this time. MP 013730, Middlesex Interceptor Systems Program Phase 2, the transmission force main. We received 50% plans on that project last month, went through a review, addressed comments, or the consultant's going to be addressing comments, and moving forward with 90% in the next few months. And that also includes a few pump stations on it, the Urbana Pump Station, Taper Lane Pump Station demo, the Bonner Street Pump Station demo, and the upgrades to the Beaver Dam, County Line Pump Station. Those two are in the Matthews Gloucester service area to allow for the transmission force main to be constructed and functional. We are also working on an environmental assessment on that project as well. We just received it end of last week. We are looking to do a public hearing middle of January, hopefully being able to utilize the same facility we used last time for the Cook's Corner project. And then we go to a new project, MP 013810, which is the Middlesex Interceptor System Program Phase 3, Deltaville. I believe Mr. Williams brought this up last time and the concern of Deltaville getting service, so we activated that project with the help of Middlesex. So we are building a transmission force main transmission force main from the Hartfield service area to the Parsons Lane, where Middlesex's project's going to take over and run from Parsons Lane to the Deltaville service area. That project just got kicked off beginning of this month. We are looking to have a kickoff meeting tomorrow and moving forward with that project over the next few months in the PER phase. MP 014410, Middlesex County Hartfield Collection System Phase 1, finalized the PER at the beginning of November, working on a scope and fee with the consultants and moving to the design phase this month and moving forward with that. We're looking at about a 6-7-month design period on that project. MP 014510, Saluda Collection System Phase 1, which is the gravity sewer right outside the courthouse. Again, it's kind of following the same schedule as the Hartfield Collection System Phase 1. So we're looking at design finishing up anywhere between 6 months to 7 months from now. But the Hartfield one is going to be probably on hold until the transmission force main gets installed, because that project needs to be in conjunction with the other Saluda, or with the other transmission force main. And that's all the projects. Any questions?
Any board member have any questions? You had another meeting. Y'all have any questions?
I just had one question. MP 013600 Interceptor Force Main Phase 1 Cook's Corner substantially complete in August. When will that be punched out and final complete?
It's August of 2022.
So it takes a full year from substantial to
Well,
final?
it's final. We'll go through our final walkthrough at the end of the month, but we still have a warranty period of a year, so we'll do a final warranty walkthrough. I think I got it scheduled for end of July, just to verify that all the assets that are above or at grade are still as expected, concrete around the various assets, and they haven't cracked. So it takes about a year for warranty. Well, it's a year warranty, so we want to verify everything's up to.
Very good, thank you.
Yep.
Any other board member have any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question. Most of your collection systems to date have been vacuum systems, I believe. Urbana, for instance.
No, most of our collection system are gravity.
throughout our whole, if you look at our whole system.
Okay, I'm sorry. Those that aren't gravity are vacuum.
Yes, the only vacuum that we have is the Matthews. That's the only
Isn't
thing.
Urbana vacuum?
Urbana is gravity, if I'm not mistaken.
I was under the assumption it was vacuum.
No, I can go back and verify, but I'm pretty sure it's all gravity fed
Yeah.
with the various pump stations that are within the system.
Have you had trouble with vacuum systems?
I am not in operations, but I was part of the construction of the new vacuum main station in Matthews. And they have the same reliability of any system that I'm aware of, other than gravity sewer obviously has lower O&M cost.
Yeah.
But vacuum, there's difficulties with all systems though, so it's kind of difficult question to answer.
The problem with vacuum systems, as I understand it, if it doesn't work, it's hard to determine why it's not working, because the problem can be anywhere.
Well, that's the reason you put mainline valves in, and you can isolate the system to verify where the vacuum leakage is.
Yeah.
So that's the way you identify if there's a failure or something on a vacuum line. Or you can also have the listen test because you're sucking vacuum into your system from the outside.
But any of the pressure systems, if you have a problem with it, you know where it is.
Unfortunately, yes, it's pretty obvious.
Thank you.
Yeah, not a problem.
I'm trying to understand this, like I see on the graph here, y'all have some things funded, which I guess you all gonna pay the price to get that funded. Now, the ones that don't have that on it, that mean the county's gonna be charged for it?
Which ones are you specifically?
I'm seeing in the
ones?
blue. I'm seeing in
The blue ones, there hasn't been funding identified for them. So for MP 014500, 4400, those two are actually split out of the MP 4410 and 4510. Those are split out CIP projects from the initial PER study that was done in 2019 that identified 3 phases within it. So there's a phase 2 and phase 3 for those two, which they're not active projects, so the funding source is unidentified. But those would most likely, I would assume, would be developer funded, is what I would assume. But HRSD, we haven't activated them, but I would assume those two would be county funded because they're not HRSDs. MP 300 Locust Hill Service Area, that would most likely be a county funded project in conjunction with similar to the MP 013500, the Cook's Corner Service Area. 4100s, or the Christ Church Service Area, I would assume is the same as that as well, county funded. It's just where the funding source is what I have identified on there. Either VCWRLF, which is a loan, revolving loan, or HRSD funded through either the VCWRLF or cash fund. But they're not active projects, so I can't say where they're funding from. All right. Any other board members have any questions? If not, thank you, Jeremiah, for that information.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Mr. Chairman, if I may, and it's my oversight, we have Ken Turner here to give an update to the board on the county's sewer projects in Topping and in Deltaville. It's my oversight, we left him off the agenda.
Okay. Thank you for your time. All right. All right, we'd like to have Ken Turner up here at this time.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide this update. I've given Matt a flash drive.
Technology. Bear with us.
It has a brief presentation that will give you an update on the status of the project for Topping and Deltaville sewer system deployment. As you may be aware, the county has hired Timmins Group to look at deployment of sewer system in the Topping and Deltaville area. And as soon as this comes, do you see the, there it is. Yeah. Yeah, this is just an overview of the two service areas in the county that we're working on providing a low-pressure collection system that will discharge to a pump station and ultimately connect to the HRSD interceptor system that Jeremiah just provided an update on. Next slide. In general, the sewer system deployment will follow the water system deployment. Currently, the water system is under construction, and HRSD policy for accepting customers into the system is that they have to have a water meter that's connected to a county or community water system, and those water meters are used to base the bill that each individual customer is sent on a monthly basis. Overall system deployment will be coordinated with HRSD in the months and years ahead. Next slide. So in Topping, we've completed the PER and submitted that to the county. We attended a kickoff meeting with the Department of Environmental Quality. They have approved funding for the Topping construction of about $2.5 million. We got very favorable rates with the financing. The design going to serve Grays Point Campground. There will be a gravity system that goes from Grays Point through a metering facility. It will flow by gravity to the terminal pump station located near the airport on county property. And then the force main will extend up to the connection point that's shown on this slide here. Next slide. For Deltaville, we're continuing to work on the PER. The system layout was updated and resized based on some recent county comments we received. We originally had about 1,000 customers shown in the service area, and we were showing services to every vacant lot. In conjunction with discussions with the county, we feel we have right-sized the system deployment, and we're currently finalizing the cost estimate and the rate study. Right now, the system is designed to serve about 690 customers. I believe there are about 485 who have signed up for water service. So those folks will be first in line to be able to connect to the system, and the remaining 200 customers or so are for future expansion in the Deltaville area. And similar to the Topping system deployment, HRSD will own, operate, and maintain the pump station and connecting force main. The next slide is just a summary of the system deployment as revised recently. Phase 1 will be Stingray Point and General Puller Highway down to the shopping center where the terminal pump station will be, and then we'll extend about 2 miles of force main up General Puller Highway to the point where HRSD will extend their force main to Parsons Lane. And that's the extent of my update. I'd be glad to entertain any questions or comments.
Anybody have any questions for Ken?
I have one quick question. I think it was last month we saw a map of Deltaville and the whole of Middlesex County in a presentation on coastal resilience, and it showed Deltaville looking quite different in 30 to 50 years owing to sea level rise. Has there been any thought about deploying new assets in places that may be periodically underwater, or is the assumption that we'll find some magic solution and it'll look like this in 30 years?
We are aware of some resiliency and sustainability issues with respect to sea level rise and ground subsidence. The terminal pump station will be designed to HRSD standards and will likely have the finished floor of that facility 3 feet above the 100-year floodplain to anticipate sea level rise or periodic storm events. The low-pressure system is designed as a closed system. There will be cleanouts. All of the D1 pump stations will be protected from floating or buoyancy issues. So we feel that the low-pressure system is going to be a good solution for Deltaville. Topping is substantially higher, but that was something that we did concern. So the laterals from the houses to the E1s for each individual resident will have plugs in them that are watertight, And so there will be periodic inundation from time to time, but we're planning on designing the system to not be flooded or inundated during these periods of high tides.
And if I may add on to that a little bit, Ken, the staff, I'll speak for us, we had, and no offense to Hampton Roads Sanitation District who are here tonight, but we had some concerns with respect to vacuum systems in low-lying areas, especially areas that could be prone to flooding. Vacuum systems are closed systems as well, but there's just something, I guess, mentally, when you're pulling that wastewater, the potentials if you have a leak or infiltration, you would pull groundwater with it, whereas a grinder system pushes, and maybe a little different dynamic in play, maybe not. But it was a concern that we had in the back of our minds with a vacuum system deployment in such a low area.
Thank you.
Any other board member have any questions? If not, thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Take care, have a nice day. Next on the agenda is E, Water Authority, Greg Chambers.
Thank you once again for the invitation. I'm happy to report on progress on the system to support our current 693 subscribers. I'm happy to report we're probably going to be done 2 to 3 months early relative to the original June timeframe. We are on track both in terms of time and in terms of budget. In fact, on the contingency side, we continue to do very well, and it's getting hard to see how we can consume all of that money. The easement situation is still the risk that's out there, but frankly, I don't know what the number is today, but it was 80 and it's below 50 at this point, correct? So we're continuing to make progress on the easements that we need to continue the project. With the early completion that we are contemplating, I think it's appropriate that we remind our subscribers that the remainder of the connection fees will be coming due soon, and I believe Betty is in the process of putting together letters to remind people of that and ask them to start sending in some checks. In terms of specifics of the individual phases of the project, we are in possession of a certificate of completion for the pump station in Rosegill, so it is physically done except for paperwork, inspections, that sort of thing. But it's passed its back T tests, and it's been pumping clean water to flush out lines in Phase 1B and 2, which runs to Christchurch and Grays Point Campground, respectively. Phase 1B and 2 are also essentially complete and are in flushing operations, and I said they've already passed back T. Phase 3 runs from the light at Route 3 down to the Deltaville Market pumping station, and the 12-inch pipe on GPH is very nearly done, and we have been assured that will be complete by the end of this month. And looking at the calendar with the holidays and the contractor's schedule, there is a grand total of 7 or 8 working days left before the end of the year, so that's pretty close to done. Wilton Creek Road is about 1.3 miles of 2.2, and that will be completed, we're hearing, by the middle of January. Phase 3B, the pumping station, we are hearing ready mid-January. Last night's inspection report said they were doing final grading for restoration of the property. So when they're planting grass, that basically tells you that they're largely done digging. Lots to be done on the interior of the building to get it complete. But they're telling us in the last meeting we had that they would be done by the middle of January. That testing, chlorination, flushing stuff always takes longer than we expect, but I do not think that will be a constraint relative to the Deltaville end of the system. The contractor, Sanders, for Phase 4 is telling us that piping 12-inch should be largely in the ground by the end of the year. The 2 segments that are outstanding in the whole project for the main distribution piping there will be a section on General Puller in the Stingray Point area that will be completing in the middle of January. And I think anybody that lives down there knows that there's been a heck of a lot of restoration going on, paving, new sidewalks, fixing driveways that have gotten torn up, and that seems to be going pretty well, although I haven't been there recently. Lud, is it looking okay?
Yeah, I've heard compliments about the new sidewalks and the pavement finally getting redone through Deltaville, which had to stay open until the point where they could pressure test it. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've heard all good things about
That's,
that.
I've seen more inspection reports daily about restoration in Deltaville than I have about pipe lately, so I know they're doing a lot of work down there. For the remainder of the schedule, and we're going to be having our engineering reviews tomorrow and next Tuesday to get an update, but the last we heard is meters will start going in the ground, certainly in all the systems, Phase 1B and 2, but even in Deltaville, as they finish the piping in the ground, they're going to immediately have a crew starting, and they told us mid-December they would be setting meters in Deltaville, one street at a time, so we can bring things on sequentially. The other thing you're going to see is a lot of Deltaville was installed with directional drilling, so hydrants are missing, and people have expressed concerns about that. So we're going to be going back and digging a lot of holes and attaching hydrants to the pipe that is already in the ground via directional drill. I'm talking mostly about construction details, but quite frankly, from a management and leadership perspective, a lot of our thinking is getting directed to the reality that in a month or so, we're going to be starting up an operating business. So at our next Water Authority meeting next Wednesday evening, we're going to be doing a second review on a number of the policies that we're going to be operating under relative to how we make connections and what happens when you don't pay your bill and all those sorts of things. We're starting the process of building a staff. And as I think you know, we hired a joint employee with the county last month to help with the billing end of things. We've got Robert Finch incorporated on his board relative to operation and the bills going out, and we've got a few positions that we still need to fill. The last thing I would remind everybody is that there's a good deal of money in the project that's about connection fees, and that's part of the construction budget. So we need to remind people to mail in those checks as soon as they can, although it won't impact the construction timing. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Yeah, Greg, for a minute. I know you mentioned the fire hydrant.
Yep.
And they weren't put in. Is that a change order?
No.
It's just missed.
No. They just, in terms of construction sequencing.
Oh, the sequence of it.
When
Okay, I
you
just wanna make sure.
drill, you basically put a straight pipe in, then you got to go back and dig a hole
Okay.
and attach the fire
Right.
hydrant.
Okay,
So
I was
that's
just wondering when you said that. Okay.
that's SOP.
Right.
The fire hydrants from here to Gray's Point. Quite frankly, if you pulled the truck up there right now and attempted to fight a fire, you could do so. Although we do not own that system and it wouldn't be legal to do so.
Right,
But
right, I understand.
the system is physically capable right now of providing, 450, 500, whatever you need in terms of firefighting GPM. We're flushing at 450 GPM right now for the 1B and 2. So we can do that. So, thank you.
I got one question.
Shoot.
I think the fee for hookup now has gone from 5,000 to 7,500, and I don't quite understand why is this happening.
Well, our connection fee from the very beginning was $10,000, which is very typical for water systems. One number I want to throw out that I don't know that I've mentioned here. If you take the money that we've spent on this system and divide by 693, our current subscriber account, or I think it was around there when I did the math, okay? You come to a number that's over $40,000. We are investing as a county and as an authority over $40,000 per connection in the capital cost of the system. And that's why we go back and ask a connection fee for people to connect to the system. Some, when it gets to 10,000, right now, we can put them in pretty efficiently because we've got contractors on site. They go from one house to another, okay? In the future, when people connect, there will be considerable cost to us. We've not only got to buy the equipment, we've got to mobilize a crew, get them on site, dig one hole, make one connection. That connection may be on the wrong side of the street. So the $10,000 is intended to reflect the average of what it will take to cost to connect somebody. Some of them, if you're on the right side of the road and the pipe is right there, it might only cost us a few $1,000s to hook up. But if we've got a jack and bore under General Puller, it's going to cost us $100,000 to make a connection. So, you know, that's why the connection fees are what they are. It's absolutely typical in the industry, and it's what's required for us to fund this system. About 10% of the capital cost of the entire project, actually slightly larger than 10%, comes from the connection fees from our residents. It's roughly $3.5 million of the project budget is connection fees. They're higher than we'd like them to be, but we're putting 43 miles of pipe in the ground, and it costs a lot of money.
You know, I just, I look at the idea of $5,000 and $7,500. And if we talking about it right now, there's no meters or anything have been put in the ground. And it's the answers that I've been getting are just not satisfied to me. I understand all the math that you was doing. I would have to look at it to see if it makes sense to me, but some things just don't make sense to me. They're not gonna hook the water line up. And the catching the thing that I don't like at all is the idea of the price hooking up. Then they're gonna have to hook up to sewer. Sewer's not gonna hook them up unless they pay the price. You know, I've been living 60-some years. To me, it seemed like a host. I just will tell you right now. It seemed like a host because
the challenge.
Wait just a minute. The county had fixed in the budget to make a payment. And see what is happening now. To me, you're saying 5, 75, maybe some paid 4. They haven't paid in full. So all I'm asking the question is the ones that want to pay the $5,000, which is $7,500, but I would never agree to that. $5,000. Why can't they go to the committee and be considered? If they're on the same side of the road, try to work with it. I said this was Middlesex, and that's what I'm looking at different. Now, understand the aspect of what you're saying that costs $40,000 to do the hookup. Hey, the pipe is in the ground. You got to come back and put the meters on. The meters cost X number of dollars. I actually, time and time again, keep it simple. Don't make it complicated, because most of us don't understand complicated. But we got to make a decision on it. So all I'm saying, you don't have to respond. You got a committee. I said $5,000. Let them hook up till they cut the water on. After they cut the water on, you will increase the price justified by what it costs. And let people know, because I know people that they don't know what we are saying. You know, and some of us are sitting there looking at us, I'm not going to hook up. So I'm not going to hook up. I don't believe it's going to happen. But at the end of the day, I don't care how good your model came along. At the end of the day, the county is the reason. The taxpayers of Middlesex is the reason that we having water. You've done a good job putting it together. But at the end of the day, that's the reason we have it.
You know, quite frankly, if you want to talk about flavors of money, we can do that, okay? I agree with you, it's a lot of money to pay for a water connection. But we were chartered as an independent authority and given zero, Z-E-R-O, dollars with which to fund a $30 million water system, okay? That money has to come from somewhere. I am all for forgiving payments to anybody, but I'm going to look at the people in this room to pick up the check. It's somebody's got to pay for this. So, I am more than happy to work with you on alternative ways to finance this, but the numbers are the numbers. You know, we've got a very tight budget, and we just have to make sure that our checking account balance is a positive number at the end of every month. Matt and I just on Monday reviewed our operating model for the first year. It's looking healthy, but we're not in a position to be walking away from $3.5 million worth of connection fees. It's just not possible. We don't have the cash to do that.
And if I may, not to jump in the middle, but I don't look at this as I look at this as a discussion. So let me add this: We also have close to 700 subscribers that subscribed at the point in time they did in order to receive that incentivized connection fee. And if the Water Authority was to reverse that decision, they've got some splaining to do to the people that dug into their pockets at a very inconvenient time during a pandemic to sign up for water. And I guess I've got my executive director of the Water Authority hat on while I say this. I, along with the chairman of the Water Authority, would entertain a discussion with the board to revisit something like that. But right now, with the Water Authority trying its best to be self-sustaining, connection fees are something in the future that they're relying on in order to do that at $10,000 a pop.
Yeah. Quite honestly, the way I have viewed every dollar that we've put in the ground, every dollar that we've spent is 693 people. If I spend $693, everybody owes me $1, okay? That's how I view it. We work as an authority for the subscribers. And, I understand what you're saying, but I need to be fair to those people. I'm going to do everything in my power to keep their bills as low as possible for as long as possible. And that's why it's hard to walk away from these things, so
Greg,
that's my goal.
understanding that we can't just waive the fees for any number of reasons, is there any way or that you've seen other authorities break the fees out into a 4-year payment or something that,
We offered that in the very beginning. In fact, before the solicitation went out, I talked to CNF, EVB at the time, and BB&T that was still around, and all 3 banks offered to do low interest, $100 a month for 50 months kind of payments for the 5,000 connection fee. So yes, we didn't. If anybody did that on their own, I am unaware of it, okay? And we certainly haven't been getting $100 checks mailed to us from the payments on that. But that is something the local banks were anxious to do. So, Betty?
We have had individuals, though, that have done it on their own.
Sure.
That have paid $200 a month, $100 a month from, for years. They've been doing that.
Yeah. I know there's a sticker shock associated with the number.
Sure.
And frankly, most of the people that hook up, right now, our situation is where existing homes are connecting. And it's a lot of money out of your bank account as an individual. But the reality is that most water systems are built to an existing system that's already depreciated, and it's in your mortgage. So instead of having a mortgage that's $105,000, you're going to have a mortgage that's $100,000. It'll go from 100 to 105 or 110 and be buried in your mortgage and cost you just a little bit every month. We're not blessed with that because we're building a water system, millions of years after an asteroid hit, and trying to fix that situation. So.
Greg, on construction timing, at what point do these remaining 40-some easements become critical path and actually hold up any construction activity?
They do not hold up construction activity. In fact, for many of them, I can't tell you how many of them, the pipe is in the ground already. That's the nature of the process, is that we file paperwork with the court, we're free to proceed with our work, and then at some point down the road, either a settlement between the parties or a court will decide what kind of compensation will be forthcoming.
Understood.
We've budgeted for that. There's a big pile of money in our checking account or in the USDA funding for that, and everybody is comfortable that we have adequate funds to do that, with the single exception of one person in the room. Okay.
So if we're looking at a March, April, May substantial completion, that's to having all the meters set, essentially.
Correct.
And then those that are tying in will have to hire local plumbing contractors to do laterals from the meter to the home?
Yep.
Is there any anticipation or thought of, in maybe this letter that Betty's drafting now, sort of providing some names of who's available? I'm just thinking of all the trades right now are having
There
trouble.
are a list of all the plumbers that are qualified to do this and licensed on our website, okay? And I'll tell you, I got a call from a resident of Deltaville who used to sit right there, and she told me that she got an unsolicited phone call from a plumber and became number 32 on his list. So the plumbing community is aware of this enormous business opportunity for them and is out actively soliciting business. So
Is there any scope for the water authority to encourage aggregation of customers so that they can maybe get a more favorable rate and roll trucks?
The plumber that I am talking about is doing it neighborhood by neighborhood and trying to go after exactly that so that he can do 5 in a day, okay, and aggregate business. To be honest, we haven't tried to get too much in the middle of that, but.
It's happening organically,
But it's
basically.
happening.
Okay.
And it's happening when I have discussions with neighborhoods or property owners and their neighbors. I highly encourage them, hey, the 3 of you, the 4 of you, or the neighborhood, reach out and try to get economy of scale with the contractors. Because as you well know, John, a contractor that can mobilize and knock 5 people out in a row is going to give all of them a little better price than if they have to remobilize and move across town.
I've encouraged the 2 volunteer plumbers that have built habitat houses for me in the last couple of years to buy a ditch witch and go into business.
Yeah.
Because it's a heck of an opportunity.
Yeah, it is.
And it's going to persist because, if sewer follows, we're going to tear up their lawns a second time, so.
Greg, one other question. I know there was originally a grant available for those who couldn't afford the hookup fees. Is there
Yes.
still grant money available?
We still have grant monies available. The River County's Community Foundation, and in partnership with the Middlesex Social Services Department and the Water Authority, developed a grant program that will pay the entirety of a connection fee for low to moderate or low income folks and pay up to half of it for moderate income folks. So there are methods and means to put into place if someone simply can't afford the connection fee.
Matt, is there anything that triggers our attention if those funds become exhausted? In other words, if that's popular and low or moderate income folks begin close to using all that money, is there a way to let us know to see if?
Absolutely. There is indeed a way, and as heretofore, we have not had a great demand in that. As I've mentioned to several of y'all in private conversations, the connection fee is not necessarily the holdup for people connecting to the system. It's having a monthly water bill. A lot of folks who are low to moderate income folks are on wells, and they don't perceive there being a cost to their water other than electricity until they have to replace the well, and then it's a major expense. It's the monthly water bill.
We're seeing the same thing at the Broadband Authority. It's just the notion of a whole new bill. It's not just that upfront payment, it's now I've got to do this monthly. That changes when the finances are tight.
One of the ladies that was low income and told me that is somebody I built a house for in Deltaville, okay? And I had a long conversation with her about that. And that is the ground on which my desire to keep our rates as low as possible for as long as possible. I know inflation's a reality and all that, but the great majority of our cost is the capital that's already in the ground. We should be able to sustain our rates for a long time as long as we run this business efficiently, and that's certainly my goal. And it's for that person.
And one last question, your meters, are you going to be able to read those?
Remotely?
Remotely?
Yeah,
Awesome.
1,000 feet.
All right, thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Next on our regular agenda item is budget supplement. Betty Muncy, page 57 and 60.
And then, in a pinch, I guess I'll try to go over some of that. Betty is on the phone outside the room, so you have the budget supplements in your board packet. Do you have any questions for any of them? Anne Marie and I will attempt to try to answer those.
Okay, let's do the first one, 2022-19.
Any questions?
I move that we approve budget supplement request FY 2022-19.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by John, probably second by Lud. Any more discussion? If not, roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye.
Mr. Mansfield. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
And Mr. Jesse.
Aye, motion so carried. Next, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest, would you like to do them in a bulk? So we
Yeah,
can-
go ahead, go ahead, do the bulk of them, okay?
So that's FY 2022-20, FY 2022-21, and I believe those are your only two that are left, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve? I have a motion by Pete, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Pete, seconded by Lud. Any more discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Kimbrough.
Aye.
Mr. Mansfield. Mr. Williams.
Aye.
Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Jesse.
Aye, motion so carried.
Mr. Chair, did we catch 2022-22?
No, we didn't. That's the airport grant.
I move that we approve budget supplement request FY 2022-22.
All right, we have a motion by John. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion by John, probably second by Lud. Any more discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Kuntz,
Aye.
Mr. Mansfield, Mr. Kimbrough,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
and Mr. Jesse.
Aye, motion so carried. Next, we have citizens appointment. Betty Muncy, page 61 to 67.
In your packet, you have an application from Robert Wilbanks to be appointed to the Bay Aging Board, and then two applications for reappointment. One from William Cawthorn to the EDA, and the other from Hallie Holmes to be reappointed to the EDA.
All right, do we have a motion for those two appointments?
I move that we accept both appointments.
All right, we have a motion by John. Do we have a second?
A second.
All right, we have a motion by John, probably second by Pete. Any more discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Mansfield, Mr. Kimbrough,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Kuntz,
Aye.
Mr. Jesse.
Aye, motion so carried. Next, we have personal property tax exempt request. Betty Muncy.
And my name's attached to that only because I talked to the gentleman that wanted to request this and
Okay.
and encouraged him to submit the request in writing. But it is a request from the group Forward Sailing, requesting that they be granted an exemption, or that the process be started to grant a permanent exemption to their personal property taxes. And, okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd speak to this. I am familiar with this organization. They're based in Deltaville and Fishing Bay. It's a 501c3 nonprofit that seeks to take veterans, both disabled and not disabled veterans, and their families and introduce them to sailing. They work with the VA. They have started a Sea Scout ship. It's not called a troop in Sea Scouts, it's called a ship. Number 222, which is based in Fishing Bay. They also teamed up with the ROTC program in Gloucester High School. They have reviewed, and I've reviewed with them, all of the criteria for waiving personal property taxes, and their mission as well as their rules meet all those guidelines. Their charter was first issued back in 2018, and so I would move that we provide for the personal property taxes exemption for that organization.
Second?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, if I may, if you're allowing discussion, please.
Yes, I will give it.
I think maybe what Mr. Kimbrough meant is that he would like for this to be part of the board's consideration and properly submitted. There's a process we have to go through, and so I would ask for authorization for the county administrator and I to work on that. At a minimum, this requires a public hearing, which the organization is required to pay for, and the publication of that. So I think maybe, if I may suggest, maybe what we meant was to submit this to begin the process for consideration. To circumvent that, statutorily, there are quite a few things that we have to do.
For that
And
process.
documentation that needs to be submitted at a minimum.
And if I
Sorry,
may,
sorry, I just didn't mean to jump over. I was
no,
like,
you're fine. I had my I was over here pounding the button too. I'm going to be very careful how I say this.
Okay.
Because we've had requests like this in the past. We have a lot of very good 501c3 outfits. They do great, honorable work in the community. I can't remember a time we granted one. Heretofore, and I'd have to go back and look, even back in the previous county administrator's day, I think our standing recommendation has been denial of the request because we've had so many requests in the past that have had very noble intents, and we've never granted one. Because what you do, and I will say this again in the public hearing if needs be, you open up, I won't say Pandora's box, but you open up a lot of other requests, and it puts the board in the position of having to pick and choose. It's a very stressful position, I think, for the board to pick and choose between these types of 501c3s. So, sorry I didn't get to my button quick enough, but I would have to, at this time, recommend denial of this one like we have in the past.
Okay.
And of course, if we have a public hearing, it's the board's will, the staff will implement that will.
All right, so I have to go back and you have to amend your motion. Did you you made your motion, you have to amend.
I don't think I can even make a motion, right?
Nah, you can't.
Well, no, I mean, I think you can make your motion. I apologize. So, I mean, it's open for discussion, but if you wish to withdraw it or amend it, maybe if you wish to withdraw it and simply start again. Sorry.
It's a very difficult position because we know so many of these organizations that do they do the Lord's work, and well.
All right, so. It's up to the board, I know, but I know he has made a motion, but you can amend that, and I think we need to just, I'm gonna listen to
I don't know enough
my
to,
attorney.
I don't
Yeah,
know
I'm gonna
enough
listen
to
my
withdraw my motion at this point. I'm certainly open to learn more,
Okay.
and I may change my mind, but at this point, I don't know enough to do that.
So maybe if I may, I mean, the only thing I would say is that during discussion purposes, it may be procedurally inappropriate to motion them to be approved, maybe to begin the process. Because statutorily, we have, while I appreciate greatly you reviewing that material, they have to submit documentation. There's just a whole process we have to go through. But at a minimum, we have to do a public hearing, which they have to pay for, and the publication, and we have to schedule that. So it may be prudent to recommend that we begin reviewing that and beginning the process. And maybe if you wish to schedule the hearing for February, that would give staff time to review it and see if we qualify.
Yeah, let's begin the process and inform the organization of the process. I think their personal property tax bill is only $100.
Right.
That has been.
So they may decide the view is not worth the climb.
Right, because they gotta advertise and all this kind of time, they pay to go through public hearing and all that.
I can just tell you, a public hearing runs you about $300 in an ad per.
Right, so it's not worth it.
And that has been part of the situation before. Our personal property taxes relatively are so low by the time we look into all that. Oftentimes, and I'd be remiss if I did not mention this, oftentimes the request doesn't even make it to the board level. The Commissioner of Revenue discusses this with a potential, and they say, basically what I said tonight, the board has never approved one because then it puts the board in a position having to pick and choose.
You open a big bag of worms, as they say. All right, so we just.
So I understand you're amending it for us to begin the process and to provide the education, not only, or excuse me, the requirements to the board, but also to begin discussions with the
Right.
applicant?
Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I know that wasn't very eloquent.
What she
but-
said.
All right, we have that motion. Do we have a second? I second. We have a motion by Lot, probably second by Pete. Any more discussion? If not, roll call.
Mr. Kimbrough,
Aye.
Mr. Williams,
Aye.
Mr. Coons,
Nay.
Mr. Mansfield, and Mr. Jesse.
Aye. All right. Next, we have Bay Custodian Workforce Development Board. Matt Walker.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I've reached out to, I've reached out to no one, but I've had a discussion with one of the board members about a potential prospect for the Workforce Development Board who may be a good fit. It's a local business owner who's had issues with finding employees and tapping into those types of state and federal resources and services that may be a good fit. I don't think we've had an opportunity to talk with that business owner. I have reached out to Caitlin with the Workforce Development Board to develop a briefing packet and maybe a synopsis of what the organization does and the type of duties they perform and what would be expected of board members to try to get to potential candidates. I should have more to report next month,
Okay,
unless we have something to report tonight, which I doubt.
all right.
Very good.
Okay. Budget calendar approval, Matt Walker again.
Yes, sir.
71 to 73.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I'll turn to that if the board would care for me to. Every year, we adopt a budget calendar. It's not pressing that you adopt it tonight, but the sooner you do, the quicker we can get dates out and schedule the necessary meetings. And of course, Susan does a very good job of sending out the calendar request to remind the board of these meetings. It also outlines a good parallel with the school board and their budget process, so the two boards can interconnect and pretty much cooperate and coordinate the budget preparation. So in your packet, I believe, is the amended budget calendar. I think Betty had one date that she needed to change to two dates.
There were 2 dates on the school side that had,
Yeah,
maybe 3 dates on the school side that had to change.
they had to line up with their budget process, yeah. And that, of course, is a goal. So this is the amended, most up-to-date version. I would recommend the board consider adopting it tonight or adopting it in the January meeting so we can get those dates and times affixed.
Are there changes from what's in the packet, or does the packet reflect the changes?
The packet reflects the changes. And the budget requests have already been sent out to the departments and agencies and everything with, and asked that they be turned back in with a tentative date on them for the board to hear those requests at their meeting on February 4th, Friday the 4th.
Now, I will.
So if there is a change to that, we would need to let people
Absolutely.
know.
And the board will notice, too, there's a lot of tentative dates, like many of the dates in March are tentative. They're as needed. If you don't need them, then you don't meet. And I would be remiss if I did not mention this on behalf of the Commissioner of Revenue's office and the Treasurer's office. It always helps them to have an idea of what the implementing tax rates are going to be earliest. The earlier, the better for them. While this budget still kind of parallels what we've done in the past and gets them the information in a reasonable time frame, they would always recommend trying to adopt the budget earlier so they can get the tax information updated and get the mailings out and do what they need to do. This may not be the budget year to try to do it quicker because we have a number of moving parts, including the reassessment. So it's my recommendation we adopt the calendar as developed. And if we can get the budget done quicker, then of course this will allow for that to some extent too.
I move that we adopt the budget, or the calendar, budget calendar?
Yeah, budget calendar.
Budget development calendar.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion by John. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Motion by John, probably second by Lud. Any more discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Mansfield? Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye. Motion so carried. Next, administrator update, county administrator update. Matt Walker again.
Just be brief, I have two items. As the board may be aware from the Commissioner of Revenues, well, Commissioner wasn't here tonight, was she? No. Okay, well then I'll hold off on that till January. I did have a conversation with our reassessors who are in the process of taking phone calls from concerned citizens on their reassessment. As of today, they've received almost 100 calls. That's not that many. I think the board and I have received just about as many from concerned citizens. And we are, of course, recommending that people reach out to the reassessor's office and go through the process. If they can't have their questions answered, they always have the ability to go through the equalization board process and ultimately to court on their reassessment. I know staff worked with the reassessors, Mr. Steve Wampler, on developing a fairly, I think, well-written press release that we wanted to get out. I don't know if that made it into the paper or not. Okay, thanks, Larry. We appreciate that. We wanted to get that out as soon as possible because I think that will alleviate some of the concern on the public as to why their assessments have went up. Steve did a very good job outlining the driving causes as he has here at the podium to the board. And, we don't want citizens overly concerned that we can help answer some of their questions with that. And there'll be a process, of course, that is put in place for the reassessment in order to get the land book in place. And of course, the board, the information they need in the spring to affect any change you may see as needed to the tax rate. In short and sweet for the board, you can't really get too much into the details into what a property's value is, but you can adjust the tax rate as a whole that could help lower the burden or help ease some of the pain that taxpayers may have when we incorporate these new values onto our land books. And if you have any...
Do you have any idea what the average assessment has gone up?
Steve reported here to the board that the average was, I think, just over 10% for residential properties. Anecdotally, the people that I've spoken to have had higher percentages. One of which is sitting around this table, which I won't state publicly, but it was quite a bit higher than 10%. But holistically, I think what Mr. Wampler is referring to is the majority of property owners, the average was 10% residential. And if my memory serves, for bulk land, large properties, it was 2% increase on the land. But that's acres over, 100-acre tracts and over, I believe is what he stated.
What about land use? Under land use?
I don't know if he addressed land use. Land use is a program we participate in to lower the taxes on larger pieces of property that are engaged in agricultural or forestry uses. Yeah, I don't think land use is taken into consideration on the assessment end. That's something that comes off as part of the program on the commissioner's end. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
That's it.
County attorney update.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, we were going back and forth. No, actually, I do not at this time. Thank you, though.
Okay.
That's
All right.
that's my present to you all. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
All right. Okay, unfinished business. Anybody have any unfinished business? Anybody have any new business? Okay, we're gonna move right along. Matters presented to the board. I'm gonna start to my left over here. Lud, you got anything?
I got a couple of things, Mr. Chairman, if you have just a few minutes.
All right.
One thing I thought you might be interested.
Put that mic on, too.
One thing I thought you might be interested in is I had citizens calling me about their real property assessment. I was curious, not just in what they theoretically would be at the market, but was curious what houses had recently sold for. And so I looked at the Southside Sentinel report on transactions that took place in October. And I selected 15 residential transactions that happened, and I selected those because I could, with the land book, I could take the name of the seller and figure out what the assessment was from the land book, and I could compare that to what the sale price on the property was. So on the 15 transactions, if you add up the sale price for all of them compared to adding up all of the assessed value for all of them, the sale price was 39.6% above the assessed total value. So in other words, add up the assessment, they were $3.8 million worth of assessed value, and they sold for $5.3 million. So it was very interesting to me. They ranged from actually a negative of 1% for a condo to a plus over 100% for a property in Hartfield. So all over the map, obviously, and these are actual transactions, these are not appraisals. A selling price between a willing buyer and a willing seller. So it was just very interesting to me at looking at the actual transactions that there was a very wide range from 0 to 100%. And that overall on these 15, which really were randomly chosen residential transactions from the October newspaper report, that the overall average was almost 40%. So that told me that if people have received very large reassessments, it's not necessarily an error on the part of the assessing company, but it reflects how the current market has actually behaved. Not to say that every one of them is accurate, but it's not unrealistic to think that on average, residential properties went up a lot more than 10%. And remember that we haven't done an assessment in 5 years. So that's one of the reasons that our system is problematic in the way we do assessments, because if you wait 5 years, a lot can happen. You can be in a market upswing or downswing, and you don't get to draft along with those. You just pick every 5 years, you pick this period. So this will come back in a discussion in next year, but I think that we need to seek a way to be more accurate in our assessments on an ongoing basis, rather than picking every 5 years an assessment that's done in a hurry by a firm that doesn't necessarily focus on our types of properties all the time. And so I think we can do better, and we can avoid the sticker shock of people. And it works the other way too. When market prices go down, you want your taxes to go down. So I think that there's room for improvement there. So that was the first thing I wanted to share with you. The other was I attended, along with you and Reggie, I attended the Virginia Association of Counties conference recently in Norfolk. And there was a very interesting presentation by a fellow named James Regenball about the biennial budget and how the state is doing. And you may have heard that the state will be in a surplus in its current year of about $2 billion compared to their budget. If there is no growth in the state, next year that will be a $4 billion surplus. And if there's 2% growth, it will be a $6 billion surplus in the state. So what his talk was interesting about was, what should the state do with that money? And his point, which I thought was very enlightened, was this is money that should go to one-time type improvement projects, as an example, capital for schools, as opposed to raising some ongoing future expenditure requirement that's going to grow with inflation, because as the budget changes, we're not necessarily going to have these surpluses. So I just thought that that was very interesting, and how our legislature is going to allocate or decide to save all that surplus is going to be really interesting to see in the next legislative session. The other thing that came out that I wanted to point out, the governor-elect, one of his platforms was to eliminate the grocery tax, which is 2.5%. I didn't realize this, but of that 2.5%, 2.25% of it goes directly to the counties. It funds county schools and county funding. So if he were to eliminate that, guess what? It's back on us to find it somewhere else. So whereas it sounds like a laudable thing to relieve people of that 2.5%, I just want everybody to be aware that what sounds like it would be good for the citizens of our county is going to come back to us to make up somehow. So hopefully that won't take place, but that's all my update.
All right, thank you. Pete, you have anything?
Yeah, a little bit personal, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, let me turn that mic on.
First of all, thank you all for everything. I can't say that it's been the most enjoyable experience I've ever had, but it hasn't been bad at all. But thank you all for 12 years and putting up with sometimes kind of weird answers and questions and things like that. But thank you, everyone.
Well, Pete, I would like to say, I truly enjoyed working with you. I know we had our ups and downs, but you have your ups and downs with anything that you deal with. And I know that, when you came on the board, we have about 3 board members that are no longer with us. Kenneth Wayne Williams, Fred Crittenton, and Jack Miller. And we were all on board together. And, like I'm saying, it's just been a privilege working with you. And I just like to say, whatever you're going to do in the past, just keep on doing it. That's all I can say. All right, John.
Thank you. I have 3 things. Number one, just riffing on what Lud was talking about, the current governor, announced a proposal to raise teacher salaries 10% yesterday. So he may be spending some of that in advance. But I hope that when we're looking at this budget upcoming, that we consider the Springstead study, and if we feel that that's outdated, we consider some of the discussions that we have with our school system. We have come leaps and bounds, I think, in this community with our schools. They've improved despite leadership changes, but we still have a lot of work to do to be a top-notch rural education system. And I would just encourage everybody to think seriously about getting us back on the path where teachers are coming here, not just because it's a beautiful community, but because they're compensated in a fair manner. Number 2, I experienced my first re-election campaign this summer and fall, and I experienced my first referendum on the monument. And one of the things that I took away was that there were productive discussions and debates and unproductive discussions and debates. And I don't mean here on the board, I mean out in the community. One of the things that it still keeps me up at night is the idea that we would be erasing history by removing a monument that was intentionally placed in our public courtyard to intimidate. And with that, I've spoken with some members of the Hartfield community, and they've put together something that they'd like me to read. According to the historian Karen Cox, Confederate monuments served the same purpose as lynching. It's no coincidence that the most Confederate monuments were built between 1890 and 1920, the same year lynching, extrajudicial mob murder, predominantly of African Americans, peaked in the South. Just like lynching, Confederate monuments were designed to remind African Americans that they were second-class citizens. They stood outside courthouses to remind black people that they lived in a racial police state where the law applied differently to them. A 2021 study of county-level lynching data conducted by the University of Virginia for the National Academy of Sciences, this is 2021, found that Confederate monuments serve as predictors of lynching incidents. In county after county, the number of Confederate monuments positively correlates with the lynching of black people. The more Confederate monuments a town has, the higher its number of racial terror killings. This is no coincidence. The same attitudes that erected Confederate monuments promoted racial violence. Lynching had been a semi-official institution in the South for hundreds of years, but during the age of slavery, its victims were mostly white. Slave owners would not have tolerated the murder of those they considered property without due process. In the absence of slavery, the need to maintain white supremacy necessitated acts of terrorism against the black community for the same reason it necessitated the widespread construction of Confederate monuments, to prevent the social, economic, and political progress of African Americans and maintain the racial status quo. Chief among the reasons of the mob murder of African Americans was an accusation of sexual assault. Based on dubious evidence and never substantiated, lynching victims didn't get so much as a sham trial. This trend reveals another underlying reason for mob murder and Confederate memorialization: fear of miscegenation. Ironically, sexual violence by white men against black women during and following the age of slavery was epidemic, well documented, and seldom punished. Jim Crow-era Southern courts maintained that a white woman could not consent to intimacy with a black man while simultaneously refusing to protect black women from sexual predation. One South Carolina judge even stated that it was impossible to charge any man with rape if the crime involved a black woman. The most infamous lynching in our area, that of Thomas Washington, occurred based on a mere accusation of sexual assault. His murderers were never brought to justice. In a major civil rights breakthrough, Richard and Mildred Loving overturned anti-miscegenation laws in 17 southern states with their 1967 Supreme Court victory. Also notable in that year, a spike in Confederate monument construction. In fact, the dates 1954 to 1967 were banner years for Confederate memorialization. Number 3, Pete, it has been a distinct pleasure to work with you. You have been a mentor, a role model, and someone I will sorely miss around this table. Thank you.
Reggie?
Well, Pete, the pandemic but gave me a chance not to get to know you. So I guess I guess that's the experience of my life I'll be missed. But I've enjoyed working with you. The times we did talk, I know how you feel about things. I feel I do, and it's been a pleasure working with you. We went to a convention conference in Norfolk. The most interesting thing, when we go somewhere sometime, we want to get somebody to agree with what we think. So I was at the insurance place, and I stayed there with the insurance, and I was talking about a high deductible like we brought up in the board meeting last year a couple of times. And what I'm saying is that a high deductible will work. You'll set up a budget, and you'll change your agents, and you'll make a pot of money that pays your deductible, and you'll shop for the best deductible you can get at the cost you have to pay. We got to start doing things a little different, but I'm a simple guy who believes it's nothing new under the sun. We just got to change it around. And I want to clear what I think about water and the $5,000. I want to clear it up because I don't want to get a bad impression. And the worst thing we can do is get tied up in numbers. I ask all of y'all, keep it simple. Nobody want to keep it simple. They quote a whole lot of numbers. In my life, when you start quoting a lot of things, you're hiding something. I ask you to keep it simple. All I was saying about the water, if I had individuals that came to me and they would say, I asked them, hey man, you should hook up to water. I would tell them how much it costs. All I'm asking the water authority to do is consider a lower price if it's justifiable at no extra cost. I can't get that. So I can't get it for the residents of Middlesex County. And I believe this, that when Hampton comes to sign up and you don't have water, the price is already increased. So all of a sudden, it's a slam in your door. And I can't agree to nobody doing nobody like that. And I also heard that some had put up first, and it wouldn't be justifiable to them because they had already put the money up first. I'm just telling you what I heard. And I answered in my thing. If I paid for something and I got a discount, okay, and you get a good discount at your price, case I really needed it. Just case I really needed was the justifiable reason that I put mine up. I'm looking at Middlesex. Any decision that I make or any question I got, I like to keep it simple. So I don't want nobody to get the idea that Reggie is against this or against that. I look at it openly because that's how I am. If I had paid mine first, it would have made a heck of a difference if you came along and got the same thing if you needed it. And I didn't like it. I'm going to repeat again. I did not like the idea because I did not know that if you don't sign up for water, when you sign up for sewer, and I'm raising the water price at the same time, this is just a rural area. How are we really going to be able to afford it? And the other thing I learned through the course, they always act like Matt and all us on the board would say, that we'll talk about taxes. Well, this is how I sum it up, folks. I like to have it simple. Our taxes, regardless on what it is in our real estate with the appraiser, is budgeted driven. And that's when you're gonna notice how much your taxes are gonna go up. We can talk about the percentage going down, talk all you want to talk about it. It's budget driven. If we do smart things, we can keep our tax money. That means what we spend. Don't get tied up in percentages. What you pay is what really gonna count. And once again, it's budget driven. I guarantee it's right. Let them disagree and find out. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that information. Also, I attended the PDC meeting, and what they're looking at now is a dredging. The PDC going to purchase a dredge and then move it from county to county. And that's what they're looking at right now. And, you know, I'm just letting most of the board members know about that. That's what they're looking at. And naturally, you know that, you know, Essex County probably not going to join in, but you will have Matthews, Middlesex, and Gloucester. And also, you know, and King Queen, because they're on the Mattapanai. And then you have King William. But what they're looking at, you know, as you know, a lot of the creeks are filling in. So it's basically how you're going to prioritize where you go first. You may end up Northern County and then go running on down from year to year what you use it. But right now they're looking at personal dredge because you can do more creeks in a short time and just keep moving it from county to county. So it will be coming up, and I just let you know. I'm letting you know about that. That's what's going to be going on because a lot of the creeks in the Middle Peninsula are filling in, as we know, and we rely on it, on the boating industry and things in Middlesex County. And also the VACO conference was very educational. I always get a lot from talking to other counties, you know, what's going on with, you know, with internet, baddie grants and different things like that. And it's good to see that, you know, we're all on the same page. We have some of the same issues, you know, and what you're doing with the COVID money or ARPA money and the things that you do, and it gives us a lot of ideas that what we need to do when you talk to other counties and give us ideas of how we can manage things. All right, that's it. At this time, we're going to have closed session.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we need a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3 and pursuant to A8. This is for the discussion of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiating strategy of the public body, and for consultation with legal counsel retained by the public body regarding specific legal questions about said acquisition of real property. I do not know if we're going to take action afterwards, but I will say that I do not anticipate it being a long session. So,
Okay.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by John. Do we have a second? Second. Motion by John, second by Pete. And no, I know it's no more discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Coons?
Aye.
Mr. Mansfield? Mr. Kimbrough?
Aye.
Mr. Williams?
Aye.
Mr. Jesse?
Aye. All right.
and since we are downstairs and